I want you, she moaned. All the way. Yes, damn it. All the way. We kissed hard and deep. I removed her halter. But when I found the flap holding her skirt in place and released it, letting the skirt flutter to the floor, she grabbed the skirt and ran from the room. I opened her refrigerator, found the lemonade, poured 2 glasses of it and sat at her kitchen table. 5 minutes later, she returned, not meeting my eyes as she walked with small, guilty steps to the table where she sat opposite me. I'm sorry, Jim. It's just. God, you probably think I'm a SL because I'm chasing you so shamelessly, but I was a virg when Arthur first had me. I've been faithful to him. I've been good, but, now. I didn't speak until she stilled and raised her eyes to silently beseech me. Maroon, I said. I beg your pardon, she asked, obviously confused. Maroon, I said. Now you say it. All right. Maroon. What does it mean? Maroon can mean abandoned, left behind. That's what the good doctor has done to you, abandoned you here while he's at work or at his meetings. She nodded her agreement. And he maroons you here when he's with other women. She neither defended him nor asked how I knew there were others, giving unspoken admission that there were. Does it feel good being marooned? I asked. She shook her head, no. I stood and it pointed at her face. She stared unabashedly at it. When she raised her eyes to mine, the need was unmistakable. Maroon is a color, a deep, dark red, like the blood pumping through your veins right now, making your face flush, showing you're hot with need. I took another small step, leaving us inches apart. Had she leaned forward a little, her lips would brush the spear point. Suddenly, she panicked, slipping out of the chair to stand trembling by the kitchen counter. Her breathing was shallow, her face terrified, but her legs were parted and her hands were fisted by her side. I can't. I'm married to Arthur. I belong to him. I know, and I know how much that means to you. I'm not going to do anything to cause him to leave you. I'm not going to try to take you away from him. You'll still be Mrs. Dr. Parker. This is about you and me doing it. I could never agree to have an affair with you. Never. I stepped into her, pressing her against the counter. She made no move to stop me. You don't need to agree. Maroon has one more meaning. You can say no or stop or anything else, and I'll ignore it. Except maroon. Maroon is your safe word. My safe word, she mouthed. Say maroon and I will stop. I'll stop and walk away, but all other protestations will be ignored. Do you understand? I understand, she said. I grabbed her, kissing her. She softened and yielded, willingly accepting my hands. I guided her to the kitchen table and pushed her on her back. I pulled my shorts down when she gasped, maroon. Maybe I should have rammed it home, but I didn't. I'm sorry, Jim. Please. Don't leave. I'm sorry. She was saying, I'm sorry, as the door slammed behind me. Don't get me wrong. All I had to do was ignore her safe word, and I could have F her. For a lot of men, that would be enough, another notch on their belt. But I learned long ago that the thing is best when both people enjoy it. I knew Amanda Parker wanted me, and I'd bet I would have her before too long, but if I didn't, that was all right, too. It had to be for her pleasure as well as mine, because, if it was, my pleasure was maximized. And there was something else, something I had never experienced with a woman. For me, it was a new and strange feeling, a protective and nurturing feeling, spouting like a kernel in my mind. The phone was ringing when I got home. I saw on the caller ID it was Amanda. I didn't pick up. It rang twice more in the next 5 minutes. I was pulling everything out from under the kitchen sink to install the new faucet, when the doorbell rang. I'd been home 17 minutes. She had changed into a loose mid-thigh skirt and pullover jersey top with sandals on her feet. She wore no jewelry except the rock on her finger and the ankle bracelet, both of which testified she belonged to Dr. Parker. I said nothing as I stood in the door facing her. "May I come in?" she asked humbly. I stepped aside, let her enter, and closed the door behind her. "I'm sorry, Jim. Very sorry. If you give me another chance, I promise I won't say maroon again. No matter what you do. Please." "No," I said. Please, please. I won't disappoint either of us, she said. Go home. The next move was up to her because it was important for her to be sure. A shy, little grin crossed her face when she realized why I waited without touching her. She smiled lovingly as she crossed her arms, grabbed the hem of her top, and pulled it over her head. She stepped out of her sandals, unzipped her skirt, and let it fall to the floor. Except for Parker's ownership trinkets, she was naked. She was a woman self-trained to pose and prance and preen before men. She had strutted on runways, in beauty pageants, and made love to cameras. She knew each aspect of her body made men weak in the knees, and collectively the package could be overwhelming. But she wasn't trying to mesmerize me with her physical beauty as she stood before me. She was simply a woman who wanted a man, who had removed her clothes to make herself available to him. More importantly, she had stripped away her reserve, her protection of self, leaving her emotionally naked as well. She was needy for me. She was frightened I wouldn't respond in kind. Her need made her irresistible. When I took her hand, she squealed and tears formed in her eyes in a split second before she threw her arms round my neck to hug me. I held her tightly as she whispered in my ear, I want you so much I'm dying inside. I want to be your and F you forever. Come on, let's do it. Oh, God, yes, she gasped. I led her down the hall to my bedroom. She ran to the bed and threw herself down on her back. I've never seen anything like this. She said. Have you seen a lot of you know what? I asked in a smart aleck sort of way. She grinned. Not in real life, but I am intelligent enough to work a computer. I want more. I need more. She said. I lay beside her and took her in as she slept as peaceful as an angel. She was magnificent, every little part of her from the top of her head to the tips of perfect feet. I covered her over with a comforter, put on my shorts, and went out to the kitchen. I was under the sink finishing installing the sprayer when I heard Aunt Dorothy come in. She called out hello and I yelled in reply. She had a lewd grin when she joined me. Amanda's clothes are in the hall, she said. Where is she? Asleep in my bed. Did you have fun? I turned and showed her my back. Good Lord, Jimmy. You look like you lost a fight with a cat. Sit on the chair and I'll clean you up. I'll be fine, I said. I'm the nurse. Sit down. She used her nurse's voice, the one that made patients obey without thinking. I sat on a kitchen chair facing its back. In a few moments, Aunt Dorothy was washing my wounds. I can tell she liked it. How about you? When I didn't answer, she said, that good, huh? That good, I said. Do you love her? Aunt Dorothy, I don't even like all the women I f, let alone love. Deflective answer, mockingly given. I'd say you had it bad, she said quietly. We didn't talk as she finished scrubbing the wounds and applying Bactroban. I stood and stretched. I need coffee, I said. I'll have some, too, Amanda said. Aunt Dorothy and I both turned around to see her. She was smiling shyly, eyes bloated, wrapped in the comforter. She came to me with short little steps and buried her head in my chest. I held her there, lost in the feel of her. I hate to break this to you, Aunt Dorothy said apologetically, but doesn't Arthur call about 6 every night when he's out of town? Shit, Amanda muttered. She turned, dropped the comforter, and walked away. Aunt Dorothy watched with desire. That's a sassy ass your women has, Jimmy. She realized what she said and hung her head in shame. In a second, Amanda returned wearing her skirt and sandals, and came to me. Can you come over and spend the night, she said. Of course, I replied. I'll order Chinese. Say an hour. I'll be there. She kissed me, before slipping on her top, kissing me again and turning to Aunt Dorothy. Good night, Dorothy, she said. Good night, Aunt Dorothy replied. I'd seen the interchange between the two of them. Aunt Dorothy wanted Amanda and Amanda knew it. I wondered if anything had transpired between them. Aunt Dorothy was lost in thought until she looked at me and blushed. Have you too? I asked. She shook her head. But you want to? She nodded. Has she ever? She told me once with another girl at a beauty contest, Aunt Dorothy answered. Did you proposition her? I asked. Aunt Dorothy gave me a look that could wither an iron pole. Shut up, Jimmy. I knocked on Amanda's back door about an hour later. She answered, freshly scrubbed and cleaned, wearing little makeup and the same top and skirt she wore earlier. She ushered me in, kissed me hungrily, and led me to the table where two places were set in Chinese food containers crowded the center. We visited and ate. When dinner was over, we cleaned up the kitchen before she took my hand and led me to her marital bed. We cuddled until she slid her hand down. How about taking off that ankle bracelet? I said. It was one of those times I spoke before thinking. She sat up beside me. Her eyes burned into me. Why? She asked. When I didn't answer, she said, I know I'm a woman who has a deep need to belong to a man, Jimmy. I belong to Arthur, and that anklet shows it more than a ring like all married women wear. I had the urge to run to the nearest jewelry store. She smiled as if she had read my thoughts, leaned over. After that, we didn't have it for a week. She was too sore Tuesday and Arthur came home Wednesday. But from there forward, we were together as much as time and circumstances would allow, which meant we spent most every day with each other. Sometimes, we studied. Sometimes, we did it. Sometimes, we made love. Always, we talked. We talked about school and life and kids, and about politics and society and philosophy. We asked questions, and there was no lying. The questions might be funny, but the situation was too serious to lie. Like the time I asked, what are your measurements? I wondered when you'd ask, she said with a laugh. You noticed I said when. Not if. So answer. 36D minus 24 minus 35. How big is you? I don't know. You'll have to measure it. She surprised me by jumping up and going to the kitchen drawers. In a second, she returned with a soft measuring tape. A sewing tape? I didn't know you could sew. There's a lot you don't know about me yet. Stand up. She started laughing. She was laughing so hard it was easy to drag her to the floor and tickle her until she begged for mercy. And it was easy to do it with her there. One time she asked, how many children do you want? 2 or 3. How about you? 3 or 4. It's something that can be worked out. And there was the time I said, there won't be a third. What do you mean? You said I'm your second man. There won't be a third. She smiled in a way that made me weak in the knees. If you were my man and I was your woman, that would be your decision, and I would abide by the decision you made. When she returned to her schoolwork, writing on a yellow legal pad with a ballpoint pen, she had a happy and self-satisfied grin. I don't know how long I watched her, taken in by her radiance even when she was doing something mundane. I went back to my work learning torts, always a dynamic subject. How about women? Her head rested on her folded hands, and her eyes sparkled. Women? You said if you were my man and I was your woman, there wouldn't be any more men. How about women? Would you like that? Maybe. How many women have there been? 2. You told Aunt Dorothy 1. I lied to her. I'm not going to lie to you. Not ever. Did you like it? Yes. Do you want to do it again? If you want me to. I do. All right. I will. She picked up her pen, started to write, stopped, and looked up at me. Any more questions? Have you done another style? She dropped the pen and gasped, obviously shocked. I tried not to smirk. No way. But if I tell you to do it, you will. You're not my man, so I wouldn't. If I was your man. Are you serious? As a boil. Have you seen that? Seen and participated several times. They all loved it. My sweet Amanda was horrified, but I detected a glimmer of interest. I went back to my work and she watched me. I could almost see her mind whirring. Jimmy, she said softly. I stopped working. If I was your woman, I'd do whatever you told me to do. I nodded. But if you loved me, you wouldn't tell me to do something I didn't want to do. Not true. I might very well tell you to do it, particularly if I thought you secretly wanted to. I do not want to be with a dog, she said, but I wasn't convinced. How about a break? I need some coffee. And the first time I told her I loved her, it was a Friday in July, actually the 6th Friday since we'd met at her party. We were at lunch, having sandwiches at my house. We already knew we weren't going to have it that day. Arthur was taking some of his buddies and their wives to a baseball game and Amanda was scheduled to go. We had just enough time in the afternoon before he would be home and they would leave. She knew what I was going to say before I said it. "I love you," I said. "I know, but I can't tell you how happy I am you finally said it." "I love you, too, but I've told you 1,000 times." "Tell me again." "I love you, Jimmy." Everything was different after that. I absolutely hated that she slept in his bed at night. Irrational? Probably. She was his wife. But, damn it, she was mine in every other way. After she left for the baseball game, I went to the jewelry store. I bought her a lovely engagement ring. It was only 1 carat, not nearly as big as the boulder Parker had given her, but it was a flawless blue-white, the most perfect kind. And I bought a bracelet for her ankle. I had it inscribed, "Jimmy Johnson's loving woman." My aunts had known all along what was happening. Even if Aunt Dorothy hadn't caught us red-handed, I couldn't keep anything from them. They had been counseling me through the affair. Aunt Linda had been totally supportive, without a hint of negative input, but Aunt Dorothy gave me both sides of the issue. Over dinner that night I told my aunts I was going to ask Amanda to get a divorce and marry me, and that I was going to do it tomorrow. "What will you do?" Aunt Dorothy asked. "March over there and confront Arthur," I said. "I just hope he doesn't own a gun." "He might, but he won't use it." "He's too civilized for that," Aunt Dorothy said. I didn't sleep well that night. Saturday morning, I was up even earlier than usual, and I ran farther than I normally did. I needed to work off my nervous energy. When I returned to the house, my aunts were having coffee. I grabbed a cup and went to shower. I had finished dressing in a pullover knit shirt and khakis when I heard the doorbell ring. I put on my loafers, put the ring and anklet I bought for Amanda in my pocket, and went down the hall. I heard Arthur Parker's booming voice before I saw him. Their backs were to me as they marched into the living room. Amanda collapsed on the couch with Aunt Dorothy sitting by her to comfort her. Aunt Linda was perched on the couch arm beside them. The good doctor was standing by the fireplace, puffed up like a rooster and as red-faced as a lobster. He saw me and turned redder. His eyes bugged out. "She is pregnant," he boomed, pointing at Amanda. I looked at her, and her expression confirmed his news. "And," Parker said, taking a half step toward me, "I am not the father. I had a vasectomy years ago." He locked his hands behind his back and rocked back and forth on the balls of his rockports as he looked down his nose at me with a smirk. "You see, Jimmy boy, when a smart man like me has you understand what a wife, he takes protective measures. Amanda never was on the pill. I have always switched her birth control for placebos because a baby is proof positive of her adultery. An adulteress and her bastard child don't get anything. I don't know what they expected, but they all watched in silence as I took Amanda's left hand and gently removed her engagement and wedding rings. I put the engagement ring I had bought in their place. Her expression was unbelieving happiness as I knelt in front of her, removed Arthur's anklet, and fastened mine around her leg. I handed Arthur his tokens and said, "Talk to a lawyer Monday. The law is on her side and you F up big time in substituting her pills without her knowledge. She has you. We will be real easy to deal with as long as you act like a gentleman, which includes treating and talking about Amanda with respect. Now go play golf. We'll have her personal effects out before you get home, and the rest of what she wants out by Monday evening." He started to speak, and I put the flat of my hand gently on his chest. He jumped back and glared at me. "Remember, Arthur. She's mine and her child is mine. Don't say anything bad about them, or all hell will break loose." He swelled up like a toad, standing on tiptoe to make himself seem bigger. "Are you threatening me?" he demanded. "Yes, I am," I said. He glared at Amanda once more before huffing toward the front door. "Arthur," Amanda called sweetly. He stopped and turned toward her. In a kind and gentle voice, she said, "I tried to love you. I really did. But you treated me so shabbily and well, you are such a pig." I thought Arthur Parker was going to explode. I had a vision of flying body parts and entrails like a bad Hollywood movie, but he stormed out, slamming the door so hard it shattered the window in it. We four stood in the welcome silence as we absorbed all that had happened until Amanda held out her hand and I took it, pulling her into my arms. "How pregnant are you?" I asked. 6 weeks. It must have happened that first time we were together. She looked determined with her jaw set when she said, "I'm glad your baby is growing in me, Jimmy. I won't give it up for anything, but I didn't do it to trap you." "Give it up? I just wish I'd thought of taking your birth control pills away from you. It might have been even more fun if we'd known what we were creating." "Well, we'll leave you two alone," Aunt Linda said. But Aunt Dorothy replied, "No, we won't. We have a wedding to plan, and I want to see him on his knees proposing to her." I dropped to my knees and begged like a lovesick loon for Amanda to be my wife, once her divorce was final, of course. Amanda laughed and cried as she accepted. "All right, ladies. Amanda has never been out with me because she was married to him. Now, I want us all to go out for breakfast. Then we'll come back and start moving her from next door." Just then the doorbell rang. I answered it with the three of them peering over my shoulder. It was the Millers from across the street. "Is everything all right?" Mr. Miller asked. "Couldn't be better," I replied happily. Mrs. Miller smiled. "So Arthur finally confronted the two of you," she said. "I'd guess you two are now together," Mr. Miller said. "We're together," Amanda said, and I heard the uncontrollable love in her voice. "Wait a minute. What do you mean finally?" I asked. "He's known all along. We all have. Everyone in the neighborhood. But we were so discreet," Amanda said. "Oh, honey, your faces said it all," Mrs. Miller replied. "Don't you know you can't hide love?